This week, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the Two Towers, we are releasing Fellowship of the Ring, and we will do Two Towers next week. Okay? This is a kind of incredible movie. I don't know what to tell you. I got the 20th anniversary 4K releases and watched them on my surround sound with the big screen, and it's breathtaking. And every time I watch it, even the director's cut or the theatrical, doesn't matter, I notice new things, and it's just remarkable, incredible filmmaking that makes me want Peter Jackson to do more other than produce Beatles documentaries. But in the meantime, I want you to thank you, enjoy. I mean, this is a perfect December movie. It's cold outside, the weather's crappy, so let's watch a nice long movie and just love it. Enjoy, guys. Thanks.
Welcome to Myopia Movies. This week, I'm back on the mic after 8 weeks of being off with Daniel running the podcast. In order to talk about the 20th anniversary somehow of 2001's Peter Jackson, a little movie that some of you might have heard of.
Heavenly Creatures?
Yeah. Meet the Feebles. The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm sure the full title is The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, Part 1. Which version did you guys watch? Oh, sorry. Let's just finish this. I haven't done this in so long. I'm Nick Hoffman, your host, and Ripper on Cineprog, and on panel we have
Atlanta author Matthew W. Quinn. If you like Lord of the Rings, you might like my book Battle for the Wasteland. It's like fantasy with guns.
Hey doll, dairy doll, this is Daniel, contributor to popdose.com, and I'm the cause of the nightly noises you shouldn't heed.
Great.
That's a deep pull from the book there.
So you're one of the Barrow Whites?
Sure, why not?
And I'm Jeremy. Tom Bombadil superfan.
You know, in the extended version, somehow there's still no Tom Bombadil. Speaking of, which version did you guys all watch?
I watched the extended version.
I watched the theatrical version because that's on HBO Max.
Yeah, I've only ever seen the theatrical.
My wife loves these flicks. Absolutely loves them top to bottom. She has the original, book-bound extended editions, but I got some nice new 4K releases, 20th anniversaries.
I've got the Blu-rays, and those are great, but I remember when those book-bound 4-disc editions came out on DVD.
That's what I watched. These are great prizes back then.
Oh, either my brother or me would get one of those at Christmas every year, because that's when they'd be released. So that was a good 3 years.
Well, and I go back just mentally for a second. 2001 was a hell of a year for movies. Because, this is also the first Harry Potter movie, which you may or may not care about. But, those are two huge blockbusters, both of which came out in Christmas time. And they ended up being some of the biggest movies of that year and the next year. Obviously,
and one of the series was actually good.
Yeah, sure. Eventually they figured it out.
And they gave Return of the King 12 Oscars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yes. I know the Oscars is nonsense, especially from Daniel's point of view.
I watched that ceremony when that happened because I was, as a teenager, still that bad and pathetic.
Did they even? Did any of the actors win?
No.
No. It was.
Ian McKellen was nominated, I think, for this and maybe the Two Towers, but no one ever won. Just the first one, okay, but he didn't win.
I actually looked it up. Ian McKellen was the only category that the trilogy didn't win.
Oh.
That's funny.
Yeah.
It sucks because I think he's great. Who won 2001? Was he Best Supporting, I would guess?
Yeah, he was Best Supporting. 2001 was all about A Beautiful Mind.
Oh, yeah.
That seems like an Oscar bait movie than this.
And they succeeded. They got all the Oscars over Lord of the Rings.
Okay, here. Just because we're here, why not? It just went away. So I'm going to name you the actors who were nominated. And you tell me if you can, first, what movie it was for.
Okay.
And then who actually won. I'm sure you'll know who won when I say the name, right? So, excuse me. Ian McKellen was Fellowship. You already said that. Ben Kingsley.
Sexy Beast. Amazing performance.
John Voight.
John?
For Anaconda.
For Ali.
Not Anaconda.
That's a weird nomination.
Jim Broadbent.
Iris.
And Ethan Hawke.
For Training Day.
And Jim Broadbent won.
See, this is good. Well done. I I think Ian McKellen, by the way, is incredible in this movie. That scene, and of course it's the scene when he's fighting the Balrog, and he goes,
Damn.
"One new fool." Like, that is,
aside from Ian Hawke, like everyone's over 60 in their category.
To be fair, I would have loved to see Jim Broadbent as Bilbo in this movie.
Jim Broadbent would have been a great either Radagast the Brown or Tom Bombadil.
Mm-hmm. There you
He's
go.
like a big happy guy. I know he's also now been taken up by Harry Potter, which is also the same year. But Coltrane, the guy who plays Hagrid, would have been great as a Tom Bombadil type.
Now, do you get the...
Or it could have been Bjorn from Hobbit, the bear shifter.
Yeah. Although, you do know what was going on there. They wanted to nominate Jim Broadbent for Moulin Rouge, but they wanted to keep a level of prestige.
Or Harvey Weinstein said, all right, you're nominating him for my movie, goddammit.
Yeah, probably.
I will say, Fellowship still got 13 nominations, even though I don't think it won anything.
It won a couple technical
visual
awards.
effects and
Sure.
stuff.
Sci-fi movies always get the technical awards.
Yeah. Although, again, it won Best Picture the third time. And again, the buzz was, if I recall, that Return of the King was going to win everything because it should have been winning everything all along, and they knew that all three were coming out.
And that's what happened.
That's why I was vaguely thinking it was
And
one
that's
of the
the
awards
only
for the
reason
whole
why
trilogy.
Game of Thrones won everything its last season.
Game of Thrones is...
The first half of the last season of Game of Thrones was great. After the Battle of Winterfell, boy.
I hated that too.
Oh, man, really?
Well, yeah, they're obviously... Let's destroy Daenerys Targaryen's entire support structure so she goes crazy.
I'll take
Well, that was
It is
after
so
the
transparent.
fact.
Yeah, it was so transparent what they were doing.
Yeah, although that, to me, didn't become obvious until the next episode, because it's like Battle of Winterfell, the Night King's dead, and then it's like, well, now what? And they had no clue.
Yeah, I didn't watch anything after the first season, so I'm okay. So let's break down this plot a little bit. 3 rings for the Elf Kings under the sky. 7 for the Dwarf Lords of their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them.
That's my favorite Led Zeppelin song.
And you're not
Dude,
going to do it in the black speech, Nick.
Oh. In the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. That's so fucking incredible. And the way they do it throughout. And again, Matt was rattling off some of the differences in the extra features, extra long cuts. The Jackson is indulging himself cut. And by the way, I know the cliche in the 80s and 90s was that New Line was the house that Freddie built.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, Peter Jackson fucking made $3 billion movies. And then made another 3 a decade later.
The house that Freddie built. The ruling ring, bitch!
Oh, no!
I know,
summoned the Nazgul!
I know his knees didn't work anymore because Robert Englund's an older guy, but can you imagine him as like a worm tongue? He would have been a great
Oh,
worm
he would have
tongue.
been a great worm tongue. Robert Englund's just a cool dude. Like, I saw him at Dragon Con 2-3 years ago at this point.
Yep.
He was just very nice and very appreciative of all of his fans.
Of
It was
course.
great.
I'm hardly imagining him being subtle though. Like when Wormtongue is perving on Eowyn, he's
The
getting
character
really.
is named Worm.
He's getting really, he's getting really poetic, like so fast, so cold. Like,
Come
on, bitch!
At least with Darth Vader, you have to know German to understand the
He's the
relevance.
father.
Yeah.
Darth Father.
Brad Dourif is the guy who ended up with as Wormtongue. Do you think he's subtle?
well, I mean,
He's never stopped sweating. That is the sweatiest performance I've ever seen.
he's
Aragorn.
He's vaguely eloquent. Freddie's like, bitch.
I will also toss out there, everyone in this movie is incredible. Chris Lee as Saruman. Phenomenal. And apparently Chris Lee knew Tolkien.
He met him, I think, at a bar once.
Of course
Excuse me,
it
a
was.
pub.
I was going to say. And they're like, so how many Germans did you kill?
Oh, well. Well, that was another thing, wasn't it? Like, Peter Jackson was, like, going over, okay, here's what it's going to sound like when an orc gets stabbed, and Chris Lee's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not what people sound like when they get stabbed to death. They don't scream, they just go, I know. Trust me, young man, I know.
And you know what? Peter Jackson, he trusted him.
Yeah.
Actually, you know something that Robert Englund could have done? Although, I don't want to take away from Andy Serkis, but he would have been a good Gollum, just this kind of creepy, writhing figure.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
But the second it's motion capture, you lose him.
Yeah.
Right? Because he would have wanted to just be in a weird, like, greasy costume.
Well, they initially, I assume, wanted to do this in makeup, and Gollum is, like, I think in one scene in this movie.
In the extended version, he's in 2.
Okay, right. I just remember when they're in the mines of Moria, he shows up, and I'm not sure if they corrected this later, but the CGI...
Yeah, he doesn't even look like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the Gollum in the first movie looks very different from Gollum in the second and third. Like, he's kind of blue looking and he has a different haircut.
Right.
Well, and effectively, what I remember from theatrical is it's mostly his eyes. He has these horrifyingly piercing eyes through the darkness, and in the extended, we get that a second time.
Yeah, because he's kind of floating along the log in the river after them, and you see this like a cat's eyes.
That's right. And I mean, Aragorn just said, yeah, he's been following us for some time. He kind of sucks.
In the second movie, you actually see Gollum versus humans. He's a little tiny guy they just routinely beat the shit out of.
Well, he's a deformed hobbit.
Yeah. So maybe Aragorn's like, oh, whatever.
By the way, I know
crackhead, go away.
I know you gave the biblical summary of what's going on. I think we should try and explain what's actually going on in the main plot.
Sure. It's the 111th birthday of Frodo Baggins, and everyone's coming to town. Even
Bilbo Baggins, Frodo's his nephew.
Right. Dildo Baggins.
Dildo Baggins.
Someone's been reading the National Lampoon version.
Yes, Board of the Rings, which is phenomenal if you can find it. Bilbo it's his 111th birthday, which makes him a really old fucking hobbit. And he's going to have a party for everyone. He's invited all the Tooks and Rooks and Crooks, everyone from all over town. And Gandalf
even his douchey relatives who want his house.
That's right. And Gandalf is coming. And they get more into this in the books, of course, and I will stop doing it. For those of you who don't listen, I have a podcast called Required Reading where we do books and we're doing fellowship coming out probably in the spring.
I think the last time I read the books in full was when I was in middle school.
I tell you what, they're good. They're really good.
Go to our Facebook group, and I posted someone did an audio drama of the Witch King versus Gandalf at the Gate of Minas Tirith from the third book, and it is as audio drama, and it is wonderful.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, special guest Stephen Colbert has just joined us.
That's right. But yeah, so effectively, it's the 111th birthday of Bilbo. Everyone comes to town, and even Gandalf is there, and he's talking about, I'm thinking about going off and going on another adventure, and there's even allusions to him writing a book. At the end of the adventure, like dinner and the speech, and he gives this kind of talk about his life, and then he puts on the ring and disappears.
That the one change I remember from the book, which again we won't do too much, is Gandalf set off some fireworks, so he just sort of disappeared in an explosion instead of just vanishing.
That's right. But he then interacts with essentially Gandalf about giving up the ring, and he's intending to give everything to Frodo, but he keeps finding the ring is back in his pocket. At this point, Gandalf disappears effectively, trying to find out the true meaning of the ring, which is that it is the one ring to rule them all. I read the quote already. And now they have been put on this mission to get to the Elven Kingdom to somehow destroy this ring as Sauron, the great magical mystical being from before time,
the long ago,
is gathering power again.
He's a giant eye, by the way. He's like, I don't even know if they explain what he is, and I'm not sure if the books do either. He's just this like ghost eye whose soul still exists, but his corporeal form doesn't.
His corporeal form was destroyed. In the books, he had a body again. In the movie, Christopher is like, he cannot yet take physical form, but I think they tried to split that in The Hobbit by depicting his physical body as the pupil of the eye.
Actually, I'm going to stop you right there, Matt. That was a good Christopher Lee. I like that Christopher Lee.
Good. Yeah. I will also
Rip them all down.
We do see his physical body in the old, because we see in the fight scene where one of the humans cuts off his finger. Isildur.
Now, here's the thing about this book series. For a while, people tried to make movies of it. I think the producers of Planet of the Apes had the rights for a while.
Yeah.
I think I might be confusing that with Dune, but anyway, a lot of people tried. There was an animated version in the 70s by Ralph Bakshi, which obviously included more gratuitous tits than needed. Yeah, I know. Jeremy's over here thinking about
There's the animated Hobbit, there's a rotoscopy Lord of the Rings, and there's the animated Return of the King where Gollum looks like a big frog.
Bakshi was the rotoscopy version, but after that, I know John Borman, and Jeremy can correct me if I'm wrong, the guy who made Deliverance was big into fantasy and wanted to make a version of this, but they wouldn't give him the rights, so he invented his own fantasy world, and that's why Zardoz exists.
Hey, he made Excalibur. Give the man some credit.
Okay.
I actually kind of like both.
The ring is good. The penis is evil.
I mean, I kind of, sort of, really like both movies. I'm going to hit pause for 1 second. Who wants dinner?
Normal that you do is fine. Do you mind if I grab another beer? Go ahead. Is there anything off limits? Like, I know you usually do admin beers.
Ignore the top right.
Top right, okay.
Otherwise, you can grab pretty much anything. Searching.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. Where is it looking? Oh, yeah. So,
Speaking of Zardoz, didn't they offer Sean Connery the role of Gandalf and he turned it down because he had no idea what was happening?
I mean,
And yet he did Zardoz.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he's right for Gandalf at all. I mean, he'd get better as Boromir or Aragorn, an action type.
I would have kind of liked to see Sean Connery's Gandalf.
okay, so apparently a bunch of people turned it down, including Sean Connery, who turned it down because he did not understand the plot. Patrick Stewart, because he didn't like the script.
Ooh.
That would have been, I mean, but it's the same year that he was in X-Men.
It was a year later, yeah.
Patrick McGoohan was also offered it, but he was sick. Chris Plummer turned it down. Although, Sam Neill was offered the role, but declined due to a conflict with Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, boy. I could have seen Sam Neill as like Aragorn, but not Gandalf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because now, obviously, I can't think of anything else. Like, Viggo Mortensen, also, like, wide cast here. But Daniel Day-Lewis was offered it, turned it down. Nick Cage.
Well, because Daniel Day-Lewis just couldn't build an exact replica of Middle-earth in his backyard to really get into character.
Nick Cage turned it down because of family obligations.
Are you kidding me? We could have had Nick Cage in this movie.
Hey, Nick Cage is going to play Dracula.
I know.
I saw
it's
that.
great.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe was considered, but he turned it down because he did not want to be typecast, believing the role was similar to Gladiator.
Sure.
Vin Diesel auditioned but was not offered the role.
Gee,
I am Treebeard. That would work.
Okay, now the best story, of course, is Stuart Townsend was actually offered it and took it, and they started filming it, and Peter Jackson fired him in a very Back to the Future-esque kind of like, nope, not going to happen. You might know him from the same year as Queen of the Damned. And he was in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen alongside Sir Sean Connery.
Wasn't he the main villain in Mission Impossible 2?
That was Duke Ray Scott, who was offered the role of Wolverine, but turned it down.
Okay, I'm mixing up my Australians here.
Oh, God help me. And of course, Sean Astin and Sean Bean.
Frankly, I think
great.
The cast they have here is perfect. I can't think. I'd love to see what some other actors could do with these roles, but
Orlando Bloom.
Even Orlando Bloom, because Legolas is a boring character in the book. What he is in the movies, what he is in the book. But, I mean, I just can't think of a more perfect amalgamation of actors to do these roles. Like
Liv Tyler.
You know what? I think she's stand up to Liv Tyler.
Hey, the scene where she confronts the Nazgul in the river, that was well done.
Well, I mean, she's fine. I mean, the problem I find with Orlando Bloom and Liv Tyler is that they don't add anything to performance. They're very stiff. They're boring.
Well, the elves are Vulcans, I think, in this universe.
Oh, first of all, yes, 100%. But, for example, Helena Bonham Carter wanted the Liv Tyler role, and they turned her down.
That wouldn't have worked.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Arwen is technically a cougar anyway. She's like 3,000 years older than Aragorn.
Yeah, but they look the same. They look so goddamn
it's
like
more
the
of a
same
Wonder
person.
Woman situation than a, I don't know, Brothers Grimm situation. And yes, I just referenced the Brothers Grimm. Jeremy's going to throw something at me any minute now.
I remember next to nothing about that movie, just the same as pretty much everyone.
Oh, Terry Gilliam. And then, of course, you just lost your most recent job because your big mouth couldn't stop running.
I will also say Billy Connolly was considered for Gimli. That's another one that I think would have been
great.
Yeah.
Can you do the angry short man thing?
Well, I mean, John Rhys-Davies, other than really hating Muslims, I don't think he adds much to the role one way or another because he's an Englishman doing a Scottish accent, right?
Well, let them come. There's one dwarf in Moria who still draws breath.
Well done,
good.
Matt. Well done. I'm not...
And it's weirdly cute the way he falls for Galadriel, especially after he's hating on her. You're like, elfish witch.
It's kind of weird. He's like, I just want some of your hair.
To be fair, she is an elfish witch.
That's what she is. Anyway, so we can kind of talk about this party scene for a bit and then move on because there's a lot here.
There sure is. A lot of hiking.
This is a 178-minute movie, and the extended edition is like 3 days long.
Yeah, something like that. It's as long, by the end of it, it's like 1 more minute, and this is the furthest away I've ever been from the Shire.
Farthest I've ever been to the beginning of a movie.
It's like the NBC miniseries version of Lord of the Rings. The theatrical cut is just a long movie.
So they had Zack Snyder put together these extended versions of Lord of the Rings. So there's a bunch of chapter breaks, and everything's basically gray.
And then for some reason
they all have no shirts and 8-packs.
No, that's the dwarves.
And the music is just someone going...
And one way or another, they still had to Photoshop out some mustaches. So we kind of start with this incredibly long, it doesn't feel long, but it's long history of the ring, right? Where lords of elves and men and dwarves are given rings of power. I read the quote. Saruman forges one for himself, instilling it with all the power. We don't understand any of this power.
Sauron, not Saruman.
That's correct. Saruman is like that professor who gets obsessed with evil. He's an H.P. Lovecraft character. He's like, I've read the Necronomicon. Seems pretty cool. What happens if, oh no!
So the professor in From Beyond, which I think is an H.P. Lovecraft story?
Possibly. Is he the Evo Shandor of the movie?
Yes, he is. Exactly. He's the Evo Shandor. But effectively, Lord Sauron, we see him as a dude who looks like has this giant hat.
He is the most badass metal cover in history, is what Sauron looks like.
That's right. Isildur, at this point, we see him cut off the finger and vanquishing Sauron, returning him to like this evil spirit dude who, by the way, rewatching this, doing these movies, made me hate Harry Potter all the more. Because all this is literally just, she took like Harry Potter, like our Lord of the Rings, and made it for kids. Like the stupid version of Harry Potter.
Well, she's not the first person to do that.
No, she's not.
Well, that's part of the thing, though. I mean, the thing with like the Harry Potter books and like the original Star Wars and the Matrix, even those were new universes. They were based on stuff, and I mean, if you were knowledgeable of the references, you'd know, they borrow that from this, or that's from this obscure other book. But they were still new to like the mainstream. Part of the thing about Lord of the Rings, which is why it's surprising that it worked, is because this is a deeply established mythology, and in order to really understand it, and I made the Stephen Colbert joke earlier, you have to read like thousands upon thousands of pages of appendices and other continuities in this universe that Tolkien's son put together.
So Tolkien is the reason we have David Foster Wallace?
Pretty much.
Basically, yes.
Yes, nothing like a brisk narrative fiction with footnotes.
Yeah.
Nothing quite like footnotes to really smooth over fucking Infinite Jest.
Or even Star Trek worked the same way. I mean, the first series initially, you were introduced to these characters. They built the mythology in the original series, but nowadays, if you try and get into it,
I'm going to stop you just a bit because Gene Roddenberry was like, it's about communism and also what's a Vulcan? That's a fucking Vulcan. Shut up, kid. Tolkien had 6,000 pages. He made up a fucking language for Elvish, right? Eventually Klingon became a language, so I will give Roddenberry that. But here, the other thing too, you also said it. Chris Tolkien published all this shit later.
Yeah.
J.R.R. just had notes that he didn't intend for anyone to ever read. He just was a fan of Beowulf, and Beowulf has a list of 400 kings in the back part, and he's like, you know what? My book should also have a list of 400 kings.
Also, he was to quote Jim Gaffigan, he was a Shiite Catholic, so he obviously drew a lot of biblical references.
He did, but there's also this whole connective tissue of oh, you want to know about the ring? Well, the ring has power. What kind of power? Well,
the power of voodoo. You do.
Remind me of the ring.
Oh, Matt.
Oh God. Anyway, we're told that essentially the ring gets lost in a river for 2,500 years until Gollum finds it, who owns it for 500 years,
which turns him into a deformed hobbit crackhead.
Yeah.
See, this wouldn't happen today because Nestle would have found that shit in seconds.
Yeah.
They would have bottled it. They would have sold it to us.
Middle Earth is another weird chronology where basically no matter when things happen, it's the same time period.
Yeah.
It's we have horse-drawn buggies. We don't need anything else.
Although it's
Saruman is the main innovator. He invents gunpowder, and that's in the second one.
Yeah. Well, Gandalf has fireworks.
So, but also, it's kind of anti-industrialism thing, too.
Oh, yeah, so much anti-industrialism.
Because I've also just now started watching the second one, which will probably take me a fortnight, but they're well, let's just cut down the sacred forests so we can burn it all, right? To make the cauldrons hot enough to make the armies for the yada, yada, yada. But then Bilbo gets it. He gets the ring after a charming word puzzle.
That's in the book. They just have him finding it in that opening montage, and then from there it's Bilbo's 111th birthday, and then he disappears and goes to live with the elves, and then Gandalf tries to find out what the ring is. He gives it to Frodo to take it to Elrond to see what to do.
Right.
And then
Mr. Baggins,
which they did on set.
Oh.
He did it. No, he did it on set.
Well, he was probably practicing for the Matrix Reloaded, which was shooting at the same time, I'm sure.
God, can you imagine that? Because remember, this is in New Zealand. So can you imagine having to fly back and forth to LA or wherever?
Well, the Matrix was shot in Australia.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
So it was only 30 hours.
That's why he was in the first one, because hey, who's a local guy we can use?
Who has the strongest cheekbones you've ever seen. Okay, so we should start here, right? We're introduced to the four fucking hobbits. Frodo, Pippin, Steve, Chuck, George, Ringo, and Paul.
There's apparently a plan to have the Beatles play the Four Hobbits at one point.
With Stanley Kubrick directing.
Can you imagine? Can you even imagine? I imagine, personally, Ringo would have killed Stanley Kubrick.
I would say the other way around.
Can you stop smoking marijuana and get your lines right?
Actually, I'm pretty sure in that plan, Paul was going to play Gollum.
Are you kidding me?
I might be misremembering it, but that's not a joke.
Oh my god.
Then who would play the rest of them? The monkeys?
Yeah, why not?
It was the Stones.
No, I have a feeling Mick Jagger would have been Saruman in that.
He would have been a great
universe.
Saruman. The Battle of the Five Armies. It's the Beatles versus the Stones versus the Who versus Zeppelin
versus the Kinks.
Oh God! When Dave Davies dies, he said, "Oh, you really got me."
Oh God!
Oh man!
Fuck you.
Bilbo. Bilbo.
Ah.
I thought you were going to break into the Leonard Nimoy song.
Bilbo Baggins.
Only 3 feet tall.
That's one of the greatest songs ever recorded.
I will say, the Hobbits, they look fine, and then they zoom down onto their feet, and they have these giant paddles for feet that...
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's so gross.
Quentin Tarantino is somewhere disagreeing with you, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, he came in to film a few of those scenes. Like, there's some loving long shots, especially when they're on the way to Bree, right?
Can I lick the feet?
You have Merry and Pippin, Samwise, who, Samwise is like the gardener.
Yeah, he's Frodo's gardener.
And Frodo, on the way to Bree, and this is when we're also first introduced to the Nazgul. Which are the former kings of men corrupted by the power of the ring.
They're the 9 kings introduced in the first montage.
Right. And in the poem that I read in the beginning, the incantation.
Yeah, not the 9 rings for humans.
That's right.
And 3,000 years later, they're making life difficult for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are hunting the ring on behalf of Sauron.
They torture Gollum. I made a mistake. There were actually 2 scenes with Gollum in the theatrical version. One of them is him getting tortured, where he tries to, where they're getting the information of where the ring is at that point in time, and he just goes,
That's right.
Then cut to the volcano erupting, and then the gates open, and the Nazgul just pour out 9 Grim Reapers.
Yeah, basically. They look like the ghosts of Christmas Future. That's what the Nazgul
pretty
are.
much. And they're wispy, and they're faded.
And they will mess you up far more than the ghosts of Christmas Future will.
Are you sure about that?
They cut off a hobbit's head.
They do.
Yeah, is that messing people up more than the Ghost of Christmas Future? I mean, they're at least direct, the Nazgul are. The Ghost of Christmas Future is just going to fuck with your head for days.
Okay. They get in Bree. They're hanging out in this kind of tavern. The hobbits get drunk.
And there's some obvious ruffians there, I'm pretty sure are agents of somebody.
Well, we have some people who are agents of the Witch King, right? Which we'll get to.
Later in the series, the Witch King doesn't show. He shows up in the 3rd one. Does he show up before then?
He's
one of
the 9, but then he gets blinged out for the Taka Minas Tirith with his giant crown and stuff.
But he is referenced here, right? Like they have the Nazgul. We have like some looky-loos, and we have Strider, right? Strider, who is of course Aragorn.
That was one frustrating thing about the book. It's like everybody has multiple names, and even back then I was like, what is this, Finnegan's Wake?
That's
Stick
right.
to a name, god damn it.
Well, but that again, you said the Bible stuff. That's Bible stuff. That's like all the apostles have 36 names. You're just like, fine, I know that.
I am Strider called Aragorn, or maybe it's Aragorn called Strider.
No, but that comes much later. Like they don't even get to it until they're like, wait, you're the inheritor. You're the heir of Ilsador, like boner of like hobbits of elves.
Mother of dragons.
The boy who lived, etc., etc.
He's basically Jesus, the returning king, except he has crippling self-esteem issues.
Like Jesus.
Again, Tolkien hated the New Vatican and actually would walk out of Mass when they would
he was
give it in English.
Wow.
No, he did.
No, I was laughing at you struggling with that sentence. When he gave it in English. I'm joking.
It should be an Elfish.
Well, no, but you get it, because as the man who translated Sir Gawain in the Green Knight from, like, Middle English to modern English, he's like, why aren't they speaking Latin anymore, damn it? Doesn't everyone here know Latin? And then he storms out. Why aren't they reading the Gospels in Greek anymore? Of course, he could translate it natively. Just, he's a fuckhead. It's fine. He's dead.
Oh, come on. He was a very smart man.
Oh, he was a professor. We're all fuckheads. Everyone with a PhD is a fuckhead. I can tell. We were talking intellectual history for a half hour before you got here.
I have an MA. When do I become a fuckhead?
If you try very hard. Anyway, at this point we have the Nazgul. We should talk about the Nazgul, like, chasing him just for a second, because, like, they're the threat in this movie. Mm-hmm. We don't really understand what's happening yet, because Peter Jackson very carefully introduces it slowly. Like, and again, I just reread Fellowship, but Tolkien keeps kind of hitting you over the head with the significance of these things. Jackson, to his credit, he directs a lot of horror before this. And there's some truly horrifying scenes, right? Like, when, like, Frodo puts on the ring and the Nazgul are looking down on him and they're very skeletal as they kind of reach in.
Oh, that white little ghost form that they got? Mm-hmm.
It's freaky. Like, there's some jump scares in this. Like, these are the kind of things you need from a horror director, which he nails. Like, I can't even imagine it, but, like, take it away from him and give it to someone like Ron Howard. There's just no color to that, right? Like, it's all meaningless nonsense.
And basically what happened with Solo.
Right.
Yeah, and the Nazgul theme, whenever they show up, is very ominous.
Oh, yeah. Is it Howard Shore who did this?
Yep.
Yes.
Incredible soundtrack across the board. Truly incredible. Anyway, so, the four hobbits are joined by Strider, and they make their way to Rivendell. This is where everything is kind of sort of established, but there is an attack at this point at Weathertop by the Nazgul. They're trying to find out what happened to Gandalf, who was supposed to meet them in Bree, but never does. Turns out he's captured by his former colleague. We aren't given a lot of information about who the wizards are, but there aren't that many wizards in the world. He is Gandalf the Grey. There is Saruman the White.
I believe there's 7 wizards total.
I think there were 5. There's Saruman the White, the head of the Order, Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown. There are 2 blue wizards who went off into the east to mess with Sauron in his homeland and never heard from again.
Yeah.
That's only 4, Professor.
Saruman, there are 2
Radagast
blue.
the Brown.
Okay.
Yeah. But Saruman, as the head of the Order, was also the one most obsessed with evil things. And he gets sucked into this corruption, we're told, which is interesting.
Yeah, they don't really explain this in the movie very well, but he wants the ring for himself.
A lot of people in the movie do, because apparently the ring works. The more powerful you already are, the more the ring multiplies it by. Hence the scene with Galadriel, where she briefly turns into a demon as she's imagining what her with the ring would be like.
And also, I mean, I've been reading Lovecraft because Matt was referencing it, but like this is very like across dimensions, people have an evil side, kind of like, and so when he hides with the ring, with Boromir he's hiding from Boromir at one point, he puts the ring on, and everyone just like a fucking prairie dog looks up, and everything's ghostly and horrifying. Like,
I have to ask, how many times is that evil side referred to as the N-word in Lovecraft's stories?
It is so racy, so quick. Don't look up any of his poetry. I can't even say the name of it on the actual podcast.
Don't look up what he called his dog.
No, don't do that.
But yeah, it's always like, so HP, I hear you're reading a new book. He goes, I am. It has an interesting protagonist. I mean, and let's not forget, he looks like the Oklahoma City Bomber from the beginning. But he's like, he has a favorite book. Oh, is it the Bible? It's the... Don't say Necronomicon. Okay, well, I'm working on a new monster for it. Does he have tentacles coming out of his face? Yes. Every single time it's the exact same
Saruman is a lot more impressive than a Lovecraft protagonist. Most Lovecraft protagonists die screaming. Saruman's like, I'm going to build an army.
But he later does kind of die screaming in Return of the King.
He sure does. Don't worry, we all die screaming. Turns out, Tolkien's seen it happen a lot. He was in the First World War. In the Second World War, he was in intelligence.
I don't think he was... Was he in intelligence?
No, he was not involved in the Second World War. His son was. He was staying at home and writing a lot of letters.
Right. I mean, he was definitely in the First World War. He was at the Somme.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
Right? They were buddies. Those movies are unwatchable, right? After the first one, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
The second one, I think, is good.
I haven't seen it. I haven't
really?
seen it.
Second one's kind of...
I saw the first one, and that I was like, I'm good. There's 2 more of these. Oh, no. I mean, it's also, you said there's subtle Christian, biblical stuff in here. You know who's not subtle? C.S. Lewis. And again, I've read Mere Christianity. I've read a lot of his writings. He's a very good writer. But there's no subtle. There's nothing subtle.
Tolkien really hated allegory.
The Screw-shaped
letters, the ring is not the atomic bomb.
That's right.
The Screw-shaped Letters, to be fair, is actually a decent book, whether or not you're a Christian.
Yeah, well, I mean, and to your point, everything in this can be interpreted however you want it to be. Is it a metaphor for World War I or World War II? Why not? He didn't intend it to be, because these are human themes. He is just, if this was, if he was a professor at UCLA in the 70s, he could be a Joseph Campbell type, right? He's essentially telling the hero's story.
Right.
And he's just in the other side of the world, setting up the other side of fantasy novels, right?
One of my favorite Tolkien stories, probably actually my favorite, because this is the only one I can think of off the top of my head. At one point, a publisher wanted to turn down publishing The Hobbit because it had the word dwarves instead of dwarfs.
Oh, God,
and
yes.
The publisher was like, oh, well, your word isn't a real word. I mean, you have to just look it up in the dictionary and you'll see that. And he was just like, young man, I wrote the dictionary. And after that, his book got published.
Publishers are stupid.
Apparently so, compared to an Oxford linguist, an English professor who absolutely would be involved in writing the Oxford English Dictionary.
Well, and he does have entries in the Oxford English, because the way the Oxford English works, when you have a book or a word that you're trying to define, what they want is the earliest definition. And since he was a scholar of Middle English, he would go back and say, well, there's this example, and this example, and this example. If you're interested, there's a great book on how they did that called The Professor and the Madman, which is a movie that got made with Mel Gibson.
And I want to say Robert Downey Jr. No?
But which one is the madman?
Gibson plays the madman.
And Sean Penn, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are all madmen.
Well, essentially, the man was like a PhD in linguistics in his own right, and then murdered someone because he was schizophrenic, and he just had books and just remembered everything. Anyway, it's an interesting story. Regardless, we haven't gotten to...
We've only covered like 10 minutes of this movie, and that's the thing. We'd have to talk for 5 hours in order to get through this plot.
Hobbits get jacked in Weathertop because one of the dumb ones is cooking bacon.
Yes.
Fool of a took.
Yeah, and then Frodo gets stabbed by a blade that's slowly turning him into a wraith, and that's when we meet Arwen.
Yeah, the Morgul Blade, it's called. Arwen, who... as Wikipedia said, an elf and Strider's beloved, helps him get to Rivendell super quick. The Nazgul show up to chase him, and she essentially takes the river and throws it at these fuckers, which is awesome.
I'm genuinely surprised at this point that we haven't had Matt referencing the epic rap battles episode of George R.R. Martin versus J.R.R. Tolkien.
That was not one of my favorite ones. It's just, I just remember Tolkien, you read fantasy to escape from reality.
I will say I have nothing wrong with either man, but you can't compare them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like we said, the thing about Tolkien is... I'm going to say Tolkien. I don't know how it's actually pronounced. I'm sure it's Tolkien. What he did is he created a world from scratch, right? Yeah. And Martin does too. The difference is there's 10,000 pages Tolkien wrote before he wrote the scene at the Shire.
Plus Martin had a template to work off of.
Tolkien's.
Yeah.
and the War of the Roses.
Yes.
Which is great as well. And C.S. Lewis, also Harry Potter. Also several episodes of Star Trek that he kind of was paying attention to, but the sound was way down.
Also,
the one where Captain Kirk fucks everything,
The one?
Yeah.
just the one episode. Anyway, so let's get to Rivendell. There's some scenes here that choked me up a little. It's very sweet. This is where Frodo's reintroduced to Bilbo. This is where everyone... The scene where he comes out of it... First of all, I forgot when this movie fucking ended. We're not even halfway through the damn thing.
It's over after Sean Bean is used as a pincushion, right?
He is shot and stabbed 7,000 times. But at Rivendell, we're halfway through it. But everyone's so happy to see that Frodo's alive and improving. We also get Gandalf back. We get everyone back. We get to see why Gandalf was delayed. Essentially, Saruman locks him on the roof after torturing him for days and days.
In the world's most brutal old man fight.
Chris Lee, fucking awesome. Ian McKellen and Chris Lee are phenomenal together.
Yes, they are.
But essentially, he captures a moth whispers to it, and we get the Eagles. He's rescued by the Eagles and taken to.
I hate the fucking Eagles, man.
Don Henley would not approve.
I'm sure he wouldn't.
Oh my god, do you think they're actually named after the Eagles in Lord of the Rings? No, they
I
couldn't
doubt it.
possibly.
No.
Well, I mean, to be fair, half of Led Zeppelin's discography is from the Lord of the Rings.
I don't think the Eagles are comparable to Led Zeppelin in terms of references.
So, man, Hotel California was about Rivendell. I can't even. I'm done. At this point, we get the famous Council of the Ring. This is probably the first scene that everyone remembers.
Now, one does not simply just describe the Council of the Ring.
Dude, everything in this is a meme. And it's funny because all the memes you know come from this one section of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we get a
No,
bunch
it wasn't. Which one was potatoes?
Oh, yeah.
That was later.
Yes.
I love
That's in the Two Towers, if I recall correctly.
I will say, too.
Yes, we could. Maybe we'll talk in Gollum voice for a bit.
Don't pull something, man. And I'm not being sarcastic because you do it very well, but I was doing it during the movie and making jokes. I went hoarse in about 20 minutes. That voice is hard. That and doing Nick Nolte, you're like, son of a bitch! You're like, you're going to throw something.
Oh, like...
Council of Elrond, all sorts of shit goes down.
Yeah. I will say, too, Sean Astin, I can't think of anyone else who could have done it. I don't know who they approached, but he nails it. It's also funny because I think of him as a kid actor, and then I think of him here. I can't think of anything in between. Even Rudy is an atrocious movie.
Aww.
Come on, man.
It's a feel-good movie. It's not necessarily great,
not
but
great,
it's
but
it makes me smile.
Yeah, he was in that The Vampire Show, The Strain, where he's like 40.
And of
I will
course,
say-
he was in 51st Dates after this, which is his best role ever.
I will say he's very good in season 2 of Stranger Things, whatever season he's in of Stranger Things.
3, I think?
3. He's very good in that. But he like, and I know there's a lot of homosexual undertones here, but he generally cares for Frodo. And when Frodo gets better and he comes in and he's so excited, like, it's touching. They really care for each other in this.
I wonder how much of that Tolkien invented. The homosexual undertones, I mean.
I think it's honestly his things in World War I. Like, he had colleagues he thought were dead in the war, and they weren't dead. And so he's acting like these are buddies who've been through shit. You could almost imagine a version of 1917 done by Tolkien.
Oh.
Right? Like, he's a dude who has to get a message across. They get the message across. And these are two people who have seen the worst in humanity, and they just happen to make it together.
Yeah, so I think it's the whole relationship is based on like a British officer, because most of them were upper class, and his personal servant going through
Or
literal hell.
Yeah. A lower private, a lieutenant, a servant, someone who's beneath him. And they so believe in their mission to kill the Jerrys that he will literally carry him to kill more Germans. It's sweet. I like it.
Now, I always assumed that Monty Python's Meaning of Life about the sketch about the Boer Wars was the most accurate depiction of the British military at the time.
But we get the Great Council here, including a bunch of dwarves that we're not introduced to but come from The Hobbit. We also get, like I said, the reuniting of Frodo and Bilbo, where we get Monsterface. Again, a Peter Jackson jump scare, where he's like, Can I have the
that
ring?
was freaky.
Can I have the ring? No, you told me not to. And he just goes, you know what?
And then he starts crying.
He does. It's great.
I miss Ian Holm. I think this was the first movie of his I ever saw, but I mean...
Not Alien?
I was 14 when this movie came out, so my parents wouldn't let me rent Alien from Blockbuster for another couple of years. When they finally did, I watched it 2 or 3 times over that weekend, but... Yeah, I mean, he was an incredible actor, and this is just a great showcase of how talented he was.
I'm actually surprised that he didn't get nominated for something. I mean, you're not going to nominate 2 supporting from the same movie.
It's happened.
For a fantasy movie like this, I don't think they would. But not that I would say he's better than McKellen in this, but he's notably good in this.
Yeah.
I mean, so is Sean Bean. Again, everyone shows up here, and Sean Bean gets such a beautiful death. Because he turns, man. He's the only one, I guess, if you're talking pure filmicness, right? He has an arc. We should keep the ring. My people have suffered for years under Sauron. If we now have an upper hand, let me have the ring. Let me and it's funny because he's an asshole and he's wrong, but you get it.
Yeah, he is so passionate in this.
Well, but he's also right. Like, people, like, you are sacrificing us to die. We have a weapon that can beat the one man who's been killing my people for generations. Let me have the weapon. Come on. Give it to me.
I'm not sure if he's quote-unquote right, but I mean, that's definitely an attitude that existed during World War I.
Well, I mean, it's... Well, sorry, I'm talking philosophy with a student of mine, so it's in my head. But, like, there's also this idea that there is no right answer. Because Elrond doesn't necessarily know what to do either, right? And what's remarkable at the scene is that the hobbits are the ones who volunteer to take it in. They're the only ones who aren't warriors. And they're like, I will carry the ring to Mount Doom. Yeah, no, Mordor. It's Mount Doom. But, and then it's all in Ian McKellen's face, but his expression is like, oh no, I knew they were going to do that. I was hoping that the fucking dwarf would do it.
Well, the dwarf tried to destroy it. He went like full Scottish stereotype and took an axe to it. It didn't work.
I wanted him to try more weapons. I wanted him to start grabbing shit and just throwing it.
Did Tolkien have an issue with Scottish people? It seems like he did.
I want to know where dwarves got the Scottish accent. I don't remember it coming up in the text, but everyone says dwarves have Scottish accent. Maybe it was the BBC who was racist. Because it was a radio play first, right?
No, it was a book first.
No. I mean, after the book. But they didn't write, said in a Scottish accent in the book.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
some putts at the, like, should he be Welsh? No, he's a racist. He should be Scottish. Wait a minute. Is he chief too? Like, where are we going with this? But a bunch of tall people yelled at short people that, we should do something about this.
And in the extended version, Boromir is clearly compromised in the beginning. Like, he actually tries to grab it, and then Gandalf has to do the voice.
Well, yeah. You keep saying the voice. What's the voice?
When just everything goes dark and Gandalf's voice gets super deep and everyone is terrified.
Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks.
There you go. They call
Is that where the band got its name?
Oh my god.
Oh man.
First of all, let's just be blunt. Everything in this is a band name. Yeah. The Ring Bearer, band name. The Fellowship, band name. But yeah.
The Balrog.
Dude, Balrog is great.
The most badass prog rock metal ever.
I will say this is probably the most creator of band names and such, other than Simpsons is probably number 2. Followed by. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so the Fellowship itself is formed here, right? We get Orlando Bloom. Is there a better actor who could have done this? Johnny Depp? 2001 Johnny Depp?
I liked Orlando Bloom as Legolas.
I have no problem with him. But this is where he should be.
The only one
emotional. He's not a good actor, but he can play stiff.
The only one I think who could do it now is Zachary Levi.
Yeah, he might have been too jokey, but
maybe. I mean, he doesn't act anymore. Orlando Bloom, I mean, does he?
He gets to fuck Katy Perry. Why does he need to act?
Oh, they're still together. Oh,
are they? I don't know.
Actually, you know who could do it today? I think pretty well. Zachary Quinto. The guy who plays Spock.
He could have done
that. That's what I was thinking of. I think I confused him with the Shazam guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm one of the Shazam guys too buff.
Yeah, I mean, but you need a little stiffness, but you need. Eventually, he has to show that he's friends with Gimli, and I don't get the feeling that Orlando Bloom understands friendship. He just kind of smiles vacantly at people.
So I fucking right? No, Orlando. That's not what friendship is.
We have Gimli the dwarf, who is the son of
Gloin, I believe.
Son of Gloin, who's one of the dwarves from The Hobbit.
Yes.
We have, of course, Gandalf. We have the 4 hobbits, who are the only people to actually stand up and say, we're coming along.
So where are we going?
And then Aragorn, who we find out here is actually Aragorn.
He's the heir of Isildur.
Right. And, the whole time they've been calling him Strider or the Ranger. And Boromir's the one who challenges him, the last member of the party. He goes, why would we follow just a ranger? And then everyone who knows is like, do you not know who this is, essentially? This is Aragorn, the heir to the King of Men.
And Boromir is like, well, Gondor has no king, and Gondor needs no king.
Oh, there's a scene earlier. There's a scene earlier where Boromir is messing with Isildur's old sword that cut off Sauron's hand. And it's like, it's still sharp.
That's right. It's also like, this feels to me very like Hong Kong action too. Like, he's broken sword. Like it's like this metaphor, like for my forebears, right? I'm specifically referencing the movie Hero, but it's such a trope in Japanese and like Hong Kong action that there is a broken weapon that must be avenged.
Now, from what I remember, and I don't think it happened in the theatrical version here, there were at least 10 times in one chapter where Aragorn is like, the sword of Isildur has been reforged.
They have.
That happens in the third movie and later.
And this.
They reforge it into a new sword.
Not the scene though where Aragorn has to announce to everybody like 20 fucking times.
I will also say here too, we learned a little bit about the weapons of the New World, including the mithril vest that Frodo has, which is significant. As they're leaving, it's like, well, we're going off for a hike that will take us 20 years or whatever. Gandalf says very slyly, because he's Gandalf, he kind of sort of knows everything, but they do a really interesting character trope to him, which is that he knows everything, and when he doesn't, he's truly terrified, which we get in the Mines of Moria, which is that he looks around and he goes, I don't remember this place. And they use minimal score for that one moment. This movie has sound everywhere. And for a second, the sound drops away, and you're just like, "Oh shit! Did our cheat code just break?" It's kind of a remarkable.
I'm no longer in God mode. Damn you, Game Genie!
And he like shrinks down, like.
Damn you, Game Genie!
You shall not cheat.
But he goes, so if Master Bilbo Baggins realized this, it was probably worth more than the whole Shire. Wink! And he pulls down, and you have the mithril on.
Able to take a spear from a troll that weighs about 4 tons of muscle.
Yeah, well, and that's where we're going. So they're trying to climb a mountain, but Saruman knows that they're climbing this mountain.
He sends birds after them or something?
He does. Crows, or ravens specifically. And he sees where they're going. Because he knows where they're going, they are essentially trapped by this blizzard.
And Gandalf and Saruman have like this Latin rap battle with the weather.
With what they call the Black Speech, which is the language of the ring.
Language of Mordor, I thought.
And so they're essentially sending curses to each other. The snow's piling. Gimli has already suggested going through the Mines of Moria.
Because his cousin's there, I think?
Yeah, he thinks they'll be received by friends. We're about to find out how wrong they are.
Well, I mean, because essentially we're told at one point, and it's funny because I'm pretty sure this is said before they get there, but Gandalf is mentioned that they dug too deep. We don't know what that means, but...
Shadow and flame. You see Saruman is in his lair, like, reading a book and opens a page, like, dun, 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 dun.
Which is also kind of funny to me because it's just like Gimli's like, oh, we have friends there. I mean, I haven't talked to them in 30 years, but I'm sure we're good. Like, we're cool. So they decide to go around the mountain and go down to the Mines of Moria, and everyone's super dead. Although I will say...
And then they get attacked by Cthulhu for good measure.
I was going to say, they're at the door, and it's all written in Elvish, which really pisses Gimli off, which is funny. And it's being translated by Gandalf, and he's like, you who speak friend shall enter here. Huh. And he's just saying all the spells he knows in Elvish, nothing's working, and there's a fangly fish checking him out from this little, like, river thing.
The stupid hobbit keeps throwing rocks into the river.
It's either Merry or Pippin, I forget which one.
One of the two. The one who's a toque.
So it's Parrot Pippin.
They're the same.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Well, one of them has a Scottish accent and has better comic timing.
And so he goes, why don't you just say friend? And he goes, shut up! And like Gandalf practically smacks this hobbit. Turns out he's right. You just say friend in Elvish and it opens. They go inside. Everyone's fucking dead. Everyone is super dead. And they're like, maybe we should go. And then a tentacle fish grabs Frodo.
Now, I remember there was a hack and slash game released around this movie, and it was actually pretty entertaining because you got to fight this tentacle fish, and then you got to fight the Helm's Deep battle afterwards.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot. The Helm's Deep battle was a lot of them, but this was just a slog, the fighting the tentacle fish.
I'm sure. It also, as far as like the effects of this movie goes, this looks terrible. This one does not hold up very well, I thought.
And most of the effects in this movie do.
Yeah, that's why this stands out so badly. Because it's really just Viggo Mortensen swinging a sword and John Rhys Davies swinging an axe and trying to...
against a squid with a human face.
And speaking of God mode, though, Orlando Bloom just hits everything he aims for 7 football fields away. And we'll get to that when they're crossing the bridge in the mines, but he's just shooting 1,000 yards away and killing these orcs with a single shot.
Yeah, the orc archers can't hit shit.
No.
They suffer a stormtrooper syndrome.
So they go
They can at
inside.
least wing somebody.
I mean, they kind of hit, but we'll get there.
I mean, these guys are wearing chainmail, so winging them won't do much, but at least shows they're competent.
Well, essentially, again, the fucking tooks. So they go inside the Mines of Moria. That everyone's super fucking dead. They eventually find, like, this is a dark thing. Like, there's no light. There's these weird passageways. They enter this kind of vaulted room held up by columns. At one end of it is a crypt. And in there, they find Gimli's cousin, who is his grave, right? And he's crestfallen. He realizes that not only his worst fears are realized, but his cousin is also actually dead. Gandalf looks on the floor and said, hey, there's a book. And the book is literally like, they keep coming. They won't stop coming. Oh, God, they're still coming. And we're trapped. And we're dying. Oh, God, we're dying. Dying. Dead.
So
drums in the deep. And
George Romero was in this mine.
And then Pippin fucking knocks a corpse into a pit through hell.
And the drums start pounding again.
And then Sting comes out and sings Every Breath You Take, and then starts glowing blue.
We
And a steel Speedo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We didn't mention this at this point. Frodo gets Sting, the sword from the Hobbit from his uncle, which glows blue when orcs are around. So he doesn't have to say anything. He just takes it out and it glows. Nice effect. It's cute. But at this point, Gandalf should have just killed one of the fucking hobbits. Just using his force power, thrown him into the wall until he's jelly. Because that fucker at this point has ruined everything. Twice. And now we prepare for 6,000 orcs and a troll.
They have a cave troll.
Which is Sean Bean delivering a fucking perfect line. They have a troll. They have a cave troll. And they're desperately using corpses to pile up against a door. It doesn't matter. This is your first, if you're playing D&D, this is your first instance. It's a fight. It's great. It's fantastic.
And the Fellowship in this case rolled 1 for initiative.
Oh god, they're behind everything. The hobbits are trying to help by throwing rocks at things. Totally the most helpful thing you can do. Just throwing more rocks, fuckers. But Frodo immediately gets stabbed by a troll. He's doing so good. Aragorn kills him, along with Gimli, and Orlando Bloom just shooting him in the face hundreds and hundreds of times.
No, that came later. The scene where Legolas took out an arrow, stabbed an orc in the throat, and then
they shoot the
reloaded
cave.
it.
They keep the cave. They shoot the cave troll in the throat because just stabbing it over and over again isn't working.
That's right.
Either way, the cave troll dies.
They break out and they're running. They're running through the room with a bunch of columns. And I will say, this is where the CGI works. Because you just have to render a bunch of columns, and then everyone else is itty bitty. So you don't see the CGI. It's just a bunch of people running behind a glowing white person. Right? Like, because Gandalf at this point is just like a white light, and he's running and leading them with the glowing at the end of his staff.
And meanwhile, the orcs are all swarming like, out of the ceiling and out of everywhere, just all around them.
Until there's a thud, and then they all run and hide.
Yeah, because they know their god is coming.
It's phenomenal. Again, Peter Jackson and minimal score and knowing when to use it, and everything goes quiet, and the dudes start crawling back up the wall backwards, and Gandalf goes, "Fuck."
I'm still thinking about the people chasing the glowing white person. It's like, is that Jennifer Lawrence after the Vanity Fair interview?
Fair. We're introduced here to the Balrog, who looks like a who looks like a cyber demon from Doom, clouded in smoke with a giant fire whip.
Well, all Gandalf needed was a BFG, but he doesn't have one.
Yeah, that's a problem with medieval stasis. No BFGs.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Can you imagine though? Like, it just suddenly out of nowhere he pulls out a giant fucking gun.
Yeah, he cocks it. You shall not pass.
Well, it would
If an
be...
American director did it,
In this case, it would be a big fucking gun,
That's
not
right.
a giant gun, but...
It's fair. I mean, we strive at nothing if not accuracy. So we get some incredible scenes here. Like, I already mentioned it briefly, but at one point they're trying to get across the land bridge. The orcs are picking them off. Gandalf and him is fighting the Balrog, but Balrog is constantly gaining. He's like, and at one point Aragorn draws his sword. He's like, he almost passed him on the head. Your sword is not going to do anything here, buddy. They just start running. At this point, they get to kind of this very narrow bridge, and dude, it's this and the final crusade, Last Crusade with Indiana Jones. You just get the Ghiblies. You're like, there's just bridges over nothing, just nothing. Just absolutely nothing. It's man on wire. I'm just like, how do you do any of this? They run across, and Gandalf turns around. This is Ian McKellen's Oscar moment here.
One of the best Dragon Con photos I've ever seen, I didn't personally witness this, but I've seen it, were these two cosplayers. One of them was Gandalf the Grey, the other was the Black Knight from Monty Python, and they were holding up a sign that said "No Passing Zone."
That's funny. That's funny.
You can still find it on like Reddit and shit, but it was great.
What I like about this movie, and I mean, you said it, I'm unfair to Harry Potter sometimes, but like Harry Potter, they very explicitly explain magic. Here we don't know anything about magic. We really don't. Like, Gandalf has powers, but like, is him summoning the eagle's magic, or does he speak eagle? Like,
Well,
we don't know.
It's just treated as a natural occurrence in this world because everyone's used to it.
Right, and like, at one point, I think it's in the second one, he says, like, it's storming, and they're like, why don't you stop the rain? He goes, there's only so much magic in the world. If I used it all the time, it would burn up the Earth's essence. So, like, what power does he have? What does he not have? And then this fight with the Balrog is the most magic we get, other than presumably the fireworks, which is not really explained, right?
Well, I mean, that's another whole thing with why they didn't just ride the eagles to Mordor, because the eagles are powerful creatures in this universe, and if they were ever tempted by the ring, then things would go wrong.
They mentioned that, I think, in the extended version, but they're like, look, everything is subject to the ring. We don't know why the hobbits are slower, their obsession with it, but you could give it to anyone. It would make them corrupt with power. So we can rescue you, but you got to go on your own, because otherwise you're going to end up with, like, I don't know, the Falcons in 1998. I have no... So we have Ian McKellen turning around to the Balrog and saying,
"You shall not pass!"
And he says it once and taps it, and the Balrog steps forward, and then he says it again. Thou shalt not pass. Dude, it's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
He does. And he strikes the ground, he catches the whip, and the ground falls away, and the whip pulls him down. He sacrifices himself. He does the Jesus thing. He literally, this is your metaphor. And the best part is, the man sacrifices himself, and everyone's standing agape, just watching him fall. And I don't know what Frodo thinks he's going to do, but it's like he's lunging after Gandalf, and Viggo's just like, you idiot, and he pulls him back. And his last line is literally, run, you fools. Yeah! If a dude sacrifices himself so you can get away, you don't stick around for people to shoot you.
Which some of them do. Fly, you fools.
Fly, you fools. Excuse me, fly.
And then the orcs pop up and start shooting at them again.
But they miss.
Yeah, that because the quest ends suckily. Gandalf gives his life, and then Frodo gets it in the eyeball.
That would have been so funny. Son of a bitch.
You see, he's like falling down the giant space. Son of a bitch.
My sacrifice was for nothing.
I also like the idea that there's like a book somewhere that is, the Bagginses and the Ring, and they just cross it out, just the Gamgees and the Ring. They get outside. We have another incredible scene. This is actually an important. This is, I think, Bloom's best acting. Everyone is emotionally reacting to this, right? That Gandalf, the one that they thought was almost invincible, has now died, right? And I think it's Aragorn says, we gotta go, we gotta keep moving. And Bloom goes, have you no soul? Let them grieve for just a second. And at this point, we're not even, we're 2/3 of the way through this fucking movie. I could have, if you had gun to my head, I would have told you this is where it ended.
Well, after this is
Sean Bean hasn't died yet, though.
I know.
After this was Galadriel, which was kind of already talked about, with Gimli hating her and then demanding a lock of her hair, and then the whole Mirror of Erised scene.
Where Frodo sees what will happen to the Shire of Sauron Winds, like it's turned into like an industrial wasteland. The Hobbits forced to work in a factory.
I thought it was just burning.
Well, we do. In the extended version, we also get a scene where the Hobbits are enslaved.
Oh,
there's a thread of very H.P. Lovecraft-esque slavery,
or Charles Dickensian style slavery right there.
That's right. We also, after this, have the collapse of the Fellowship.
Because, they travel down the river. Meanwhile, Saruman has got enough of his Uruk-hai, the super orcs that he's been breeding under Isengard.
This is also, by the way, some Peter Jackson-esque, body horror. They come out of these, wet bubblegum sacks. They're dripping and gross. We get even more of this in Two Towers, but this is some horror. The design on the orcs and the trolls and the Uruk-hai, it's incredible, but it's really gross.
Now, in the theatrical version, at least, one thing that stuck out to me was the obsession with Galadriel's feet.
Yes, there's a lot of foot stuff.
Oh yeah,
so much foot stuff.
Second unit director Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, that's right. As they're kind of wandering off from this, this is where we have the interaction between Boromir and Frodo, where he's coming on he's trying to literally take the ring. He's attacking Frodo. And Frodo puts the ring on, essentially alerting everyone to where he is, but to get away from Boromir.
Right.
And then, he gets real petty with Boromir. He's like, curse you, curse the halflings, and he just punches him while invisible.
And
that's in the extended version. I remember that in the theatrical version.
Yeah, that's only in our version.
I remember that happened in the theatrical version, too.
No.
I don't remember the Amon Hen, that's the last battle in the movie, where I don't remember being that different.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, I saw him punch him, and if you guys didn't see him punch him...
I don't remember any punches thrown at that
he's
point.
invisible, so he just curses the halfling and something just falls over. He just got nut-shotted.
So the Uruk-hai take Merry and Pippin. Right?
Because they were under orders to get the hobbits, and they can't really tell them apart.
That's right. Frodo and Sam... Well, Frodo tries to run away on his own to the river. Sam jumps out, and he can't swim. He goes... essentially, he goes, I'm going on my own. He goes, you're right. It's a good call. I'm going with you. Which is good.
Because he made a promise to Gandalf, if I recall correctly.
He does.
And
it's Gamgee and the Ring, I'm telling you.
And meanwhile, the Uruk-hai are just wrecking. Well, they get wrecked pretty heavily, but they're wrecking everything else.
And
now the Uruk-hai are like the SWAT team of the orcs.
They're a lot bigger. They can withstand the sun better.
Like I said, they're the SWAT team of the orcs. You're basically right. They're a lot bigger and tougher, and they come after the Fellowship. Boromir gets shot with arrows 3 times.
3 times, and Lurtz, the general, is going to just slow-mo just kill him for giggles, and then Aragorn just jumps on him, and Lurtz is whooping Aragorn for the first few minutes of the fight.
Well, and I would guess this is a Jackson thing, but they give him a very famous painting pose of Saint Sebastian, where his chest is out and he's being pierced by arrows. But yeah, no, Sean Bean super dies here.
Saint Sebastian, that'd be a Tolkien thing, not a Jackson thing.
Well, yes, but the shot is established like a painting. But I will say, dude, he super dies.
Sean Bean, what do you expect?
He's good at dying. What can you say?
He didn't die in National Treasure. I just want to point that out.
That's why it's not a very good movie. Now, had he died, extra star. But yeah, so at this point, the rest of the Fellowship decide to go chase down the hobbits. They're going the other hobbits, Merry and Pippin. They're going to go try to rescue Merry and Pippin from the Uruk-hai, while Sam and Frodo go off on their own.
And then we get a Viking funeral for Boromir after he dies, and if the Fellowship's the Fellowship is fragmented.
There you go. And everyone decided after this to get a tattoo that matched, except for Jonathan Rhys-Davies.
He didn't?
Nope.
Yeah, his stunt double got it for him.
Oh, fucking bastard. Why didn't he do it?
Well, to be fair, if he was Jewish, he wouldn't be able to be buried in a Jewish cemetery if he got a tattoo, but I don't think he's Jewish.
Maybe he just doesn't like the tattoos.
What's that?
Maybe he just doesn't like tattoos.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, most of them got it on, their ankle, where no one could see it anyway, so...
Yeah, John Rhys-Davies is a weird dude, and we're fine. That's it. That's Fellowship of the Ring. Fucking great movie. I mean, I could just
Yeah, go see it.
If you haven't seen it, it's 20 years old, which is incredible. Yeah, this came out in December 2001.
When I was in high school.
Yeah.
Well, we were all in high school.
I was 14.
in college.
I was in 8th grade.
Almost there.
And he was in college.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it's remarkable. And it's funny because it's one of those things, too, where you're like, oh, movies can be good and popular. Right? Because this is one of those movies, all 3 of these movies were nominated for Best Picture. I think only the 3rd one won. Mm-hmm. But, you say Oscar bait. There is Oscar bait movies, but this is just a well-made, fantastic, action-y movie. I don't know. I love this movie. Anyone else? Final thoughts?
See it. Go see it. See the extended version if you want the one with all the lore and the NBC miniseries version.
Yeah.
The amazing thing to me is just how successful it was at interpreting Tolkien's world building, because again, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of pages about Middle-earth, and trying to condense it into a movie that people care about, it was considered impossible by Stanley Kubrick, but Peter Jackson did it. And he did it well, and just the experience is still great.
I mean, you're right. Peter Jackson is a better director than Stanley Kubrick.
He doesn't need to make you do the shot 100 times.
That's right. Jeremy?
Yes, he does. He's a famous perfectionist. Peter Jackson is.
Yeah, he is.
For me, this is the least of the three. I think this is one of the rare series where each film gets better.
Yeah.
I need to see the extended version because I think like half of this one is world building, while the other two are just okay. Here's the rest of the story. So maybe the extended kind of gives everything more time to breathe. Like I saw this a couple of months ago and I was like, man, there is too much in this despite it being, the same length as the second one. So maybe the extended will give a little more space to it and let it be a movie rather than set up.
So in terms of a series getting better as it goes along, it's this and Candyman, I think, are your two standards, right?
I will say the Avengers.
Oh, okay.
Each one gets better.
Not Back to the Future.
No.
Not Jurassic Park.
No.
Not the Good Godfather.
No.
If
Mad Max 3 didn't exist, Mad Max would be there too.
Mad Max is, I'd give you Mad Max. Not the Seasons of the Simpsons.
Good Lord, not Seasons of the Simpsons.
The original Star Wars trilogy, the second one's probably the best. Anyway. This is incredible. I love this movie. I'm shocked it got made. Honestly, like that's the other thing too. Like I don't know where New Line found $100 million to make this.
If this had flopped, they would be done.
That's it.
So basically, like it was their Hail Mary, basically.
And
you give it to the guy who made a bunch of gore flicks in New Zealand and The Frighteners.
That's it. Yeah. And it worked out. Like this movie, in some ways, is a miracle that it came together as well as it did because it's remarkable. I can't think of anything else like it. I will agree with Jeremy. Like I had a hard time remembering where it ended because this doesn't feel like a movie and. Tolkien had written the book as one giant book, and the publisher said, we can't publish it like this, you have to break it up into 3. It would have almost been cleaner if it died in the Cave of Moria, and then you have, like, the second movie, and, like, you made 4 movies instead of 3. But I have no complaints. This movie's nearly perfect, for especially how loyal it is to the source material. I do miss Tom Bombadil, but I don't know how you fit him in for 2.5 hours in the middle of this
The book is very slow at the beginning.
I mean, agree to disagree. As a kid, I would have agreed with you. As someone who reread it this year, I think it's fantastic. Because it's also trying to say something more than an action movie. Like, it has a philosophy on the world that it lives in. And it's something that's hard to portray. Because this is a movie that has action. It has drama. And it has, like, a philosophy. Like, it's the Star Wars rule times 2, but like, how do you set up a universe with a religion and a world and an ultimate power and keep it intriguing in less than 2 hours? Jackson failed at the 2 hours part, but did everything else. I don't know when we'll do them, but we'll do all 3 of these movies at some point. Maybe we'll do one each when they came out on their 20th anniversary, year after year. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, thanks for subscribing, thanks for doing all the things you do, and it's good to be back on the mic, guys. So thanks.
Myopia Movies is produced by Nick Hoffman and Daniel Settis. It is hosted by Nick Hoffman and Daniel Settis. Mission Briefing is hosted by John Copsey. Podcasts are edited by Daniel Settis, and Patreon is edited by Nick Hoffman. Our engineer is Nick Hoffman. The theme song is Surf Shimmy by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license.